Gilbert! That's them, huh? Go, we're lucky Sam! No!
What's Eating Gilbert Grape is terrific. And it's kind of a forgotten movie, despite having an excellent performance by a young Johnny Depp, and also having a very early performance from DiCaprio and his first Oscar snub. It is one of those ones that I just don't feel like it comes up as much in conversations that I wish it did, because this movie is fantastic. It's a very low-key and intimate look into the life of Gilbert, trapped under the confinements of his broken home that he carries responsibility for, even at the expense of his own interest. And today, I want to do a chronological breakdown of the movie to look a little bit of what it is that traps Gilbert, how the people and relationships that he has is what sets him on the dark spiral that he is in, and in the end, what it is that breaks him out of it. Today, I want to look at what's eating Gilbert Grape. Now, to understand Gilbert's life and the development that he goes through during the movie, there are three key relationships that we need to focus on. It is his relationship to his family, Arnie and Bonnie primarily, it is his relationship to Mrs. Betty Carver, and it is his relationship to Becky. Now, let's start with his family. Gilbert is someone who feels trapped by his family, under the constant pressure of caring for them and the responsibilities that he has in the home. His family consists of Ellen, his younger bratty sister, his other sister Amy, who has taken on a bit more of the role of the mother of the house, since his actual mother Bonnie has been suffering from depression for years and is now morbidly obese as an effect of not having left the house for 7 years. He also has an older brother called Larry who, in Gilbert's own words,
I got another brother Larry, but he got away.
But then there's also his younger brother Arnie, a mentally disabled kid who is just turning 18, someone that Gilbert cares for a lot, but as Gilbert say in his own words,
some days you want him to live, some days you don't.
Now, this very dysfunctional family has in a lot of ways been defined by the loss of their father. Their father committed suicide around 17 years ago, which was what pushed Bonnie into the depression she's in and has gotten as obese as she is, and of course spiraling into a lot of different directions. This left the family shocked and Bonnie depressed for the entire time going forward. Now, the father built the house, and it is now Gilbert's job to kind of maintain the repairs of the house and make sure that it's still standing. Now, Gilbert feels very trapped in his life. He goes through his day-to-day of caring for his family, tending to his job, and being there for everyone else in his life, very much doing so at the expense of his own interests. He barely has any agency whatsoever and rarely make any choices of his own, rather than just following along and catering to what everyone else expects and asks of him. And he copes with this through a few different means of escape. One of them is mocking and making fun of Bonnie behind her back, referring to her with his friends as like a beached whale and all of these nasty things that he say about her, but also that he actively help out some kids, like lifting up their heads so that they can see in and actually see Bonnie. And this of course is a defense mechanism of the shame that he feels about his family, trying to lean into it rather than run away. Now, the other means of escape he has is actually together with another lady called Mrs. Carver, or Betty, we can call her. Now, Betty is a character that is very crucial to Gilbert's development, because in a lot of ways, both Gilbert and Betty are using the other person as a means of escape. For Gilbert, it is very much an escape from his regular day-to-day life that he has. And in some ways, their relationship also reflects Gilbert's own life in his passiveness. She orders deliveries for him to come over, and she is the first one to make moves when he is there. And then Gilbert, much like in his life outside of this, is passive, dependable, and doesn't ever fight for what it is that he wants. Now, for Betty, Gilbert is filling the void that is created by her failing marriage. Her husband, Ken, is someone who provides their family with everything they could want. A big house, a trampoline, a pool, very materialistic things. But Ken is not someone who is providing Betty with the physical and emotional comfort that she needs, which is what pushes her to seek out this relationship with Gilbert. A relationship that is not built on love, but that is built on comfort and escape. Now, if we were to rewind to the very first scene in the movie, Gilbert and Arnie have a yearly ritual of watching all of the camper van come by. Now, these camper vans, as Gilbert himself expresses,
watching the campers is our yearly ritual. They're doing the right thing, just passing through.
Now these camper vans are kind of representative of the life that Gilbert could have outside of Andorra. And year after year, Gilbert has to watch these vans appear and just go by just as quick as they appeared again. Of course, being representative of opportunities of a different life coming and just going right by him and disappearing. However, this year one of the camper vans breaks down in Andorra. Now there is someone here in Andorra who represents this other life that Gilbert could have outside of Andorra. That of course piques Gilbert's interest quite a bit. So this is where we meet Becky, a character who is in a lot of ways the polar opposite of Gilbert. Lives her life very freely, free from responsibilities, constantly out on the road and traveling, and as she says herself,
I'm a worldly kind of girl.
But being all of these things while still being very caring and kind to all the people around her. Everything that Gilbert feels like he can't be. Now, the first time that they properly hang out is when Gilbert does a delivery for her together with Arnie. And this is the first time that she gets a peek into his personality and his mindset. He constantly supervises Arnie, making sure that he doesn't damage anything or say the wrong thing or be rude or something like that. Constantly checking over him, even though clearly Becky doesn't mind. Then when they arrive to Becky's camper van, Arnie brings out the bags and drops one of them, and Gilbert immediately starts apologizing of it a lot. Now this is one of those scenes that really highlight the brilliance and the subtleties in Johnny Depp and Juliette Lewis's acting. Because here when Gilbert is apologizing a lot for Arnie dropping the bag, then Becky is thinking that he's just being polite. But then he keeps doing it and you can tell that he is really upset about it. And that's when she starts to clock that Gilbert is taking a lot of responsibility for other people's shortcomings. And that's when it is that Becky tries to express to him that it's like, she's not upset about it, we're not sorry, there's no need to apologize so much for it. Now in the following scene, Gilbert's friend Tucker comes by the house to look a little bit because it seems like the house is starting to fall apart a little bit. And Tucker spends a lot of time just talking about how flawed the construction of the house is to begin with. Now, my takeaway from this movie has always been that the house is kind of a personification of Gilbert's father, in the way that Bonnie is so attached to the house and unable to move on from it, something that thematically comes back towards the end of the movie as well. And when it is that you watch the movie with that in mind, this is kind of the moment where you realize that the situation with their father and the role he plays in the family is so fundamentally broken from the ground up. It's poorly built and slowly caving in on itself. Now there's also something to pull from that in terms of how Gilbert is haunted by the memory of his father. Because in some ways his father represents the worst possible outcome for Gilbert. His father was also someone who had a lot of responsibilities at home and felt very trapped. And instead of actually being there for his family, he took the easy way out, dropping all of his responsibilities, ending his own life, and abandoning his family. This is a theme that comes back a few times during the movie, and it essentially just puts additional pressure on Gilbert. Now Gilbert has seen what happened the last time that someone felt trapped and suffocated by the family, and when it was that someone caved to the temptation of leaving, and he saw what consequences that essentially had on the family. But despite him realizing the importance of him being there for his family, he feels very, very trapped in it. No one, including himself, is looking out for his own interests, and he lacks agency, goes through life very passively, as demonstrated in two very poignant scenes where the movie is essentially screaming both to us as an audience but also to Gilbert that
We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, Gilbert. We're not going anywhere, you know? We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. Gilbert's not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
Here he then seeks out Becky, someone who is living the polar opposite of his life, living it very free from obligations, off on the road and constantly traveling around. And here's another example of Becky trying to challenge Gilbert's views. Because even when it is that they're just hanging out, Gilbert feels like there's not really anything to do in Andorra. Because as he explained it himself,
Describing Andorra is like dancing to no music. It's a town where nothing much ever happens. And nothing much ever will.
And the most fun thing he can think of what to do in town is just going to get ice cream. But here then we have someone like Becky who doesn't need anything fancy to have a good time. She takes enjoyments and finds beauty in the tiny elements of life. Just sitting and enjoying the sunset and enjoying the sky. Very much something that Gilbert is not really finding any enjoyment in right now because he just feels very trapped in Andorra. Now afterwards we get a very crucial moment for Gilbert's development. He wants to spend time with Becky, but he has to go home to give Arnie a bath. So he tries to cut corners and try to get Arnie to do it himself, which ends up with Arnie being alone and freezing in the bath the entire night, unable to get out. This moment here actually has a huge significance on Gilbert as a character. For starters, establishing his shortcomings as a caretaker. Even when it is that he spends all of his energy caring for his family, he still will make mistakes from time to time. But this also acts as a catalyst for change. He can't continue going through this in-between state. He either has to commit to the life of obligations and resentments that he has right now, or commit to the changes that he wants. Later on, we get a very important moment for Gilbert's relationship with Mrs. Carver. He comes by for a delivery on their anniversary, and Betty tries to play around and seduce him. This ultimately lands wrong, and Gilbert storms off. When it is that Gilbert later comes back together with Ken because Betty has burnt the cookies, then Betty does a little declaration of love, kind of, towards Gilbert. What it is that she's trying to say here is that Betty could have had any guy, but she specifically chose Gilbert. He is not just any guy. She sees something really special in him. But that's also the moment where Gilbert pushes back and asks,
Why did you?
to try and see what it was that she actually saw in him. And then she responds with,
Because I knew you'd always be there. Because I knew you'd never leave.
Now Gilbert can see it, clear as day. He wasn't chosen because of him as a person. It was because of his reliability, her knowing that he would never leave Endora. It exposes the hollowness of their relationship, but more importantly, it also shows that the reason why Betty got together with Gilbert was for the same reason why Gilbert feels so unhappy in his life. Admired for his reliability, not for him as a person. Now the next scene has a very tiny moment that has always impressed me as a very creative way to express Gilbert's passiveness in life. The entire family is watching a movie, and this almost becomes a meta moment of the movie they are watching trying to talk directly to Gilbert. We are looking at Gilbert and hearing them say,
What is he looking at? What is he thinking?
But just as the movie asks that question, he is then interrupted by his family's duties and obligations that come crashing into it before he can even say anything.
What is he looking at? What is he thinking?
I think it's time for Arnie to take a bath.
The movie tried to give Gilbert an opportunity to express something for himself, and then the family just came crashing down, interrupting it. Very, very creative directing that they have here. A little later in the movie, we get a moment where Becky is trying to convince both Arnie and Gilbert to come for a swim with her. After a little bit of playful back and forth, Gilbert eventually caves and goes in with all of his clothes on together with Becky. Now this moment, despite its simplicity, can be seen as the first moment of change for Gilbert. I mean, you can step into the thing of water being a symbolism for rebirth and stuff like that, but I think the easier read is actually that this is just the first time that Gilbert lets go of his passive approach and enters into the free and the unknown way of living his life. Despite being very tiny, it does have a lot of significance because it's the first step that Gilbert takes. Afterwards, we get a very powerful moment where Becky asks Gilbert to name something he wants. When he's asked to do so, he just mentions things for his family. All things he wants is for other people.
House. I want a new house for the family. I want Mama to take aerobics classes. I want Ellen to grow up. I want a new brain for Arnie.
Further showing how much Gilbert lives his life responding to the needs of others rather than what he wants for himself. But Becky, recognizing this, confronts Gilbert and asks,
What do you want for you? Just for you.
and Gilbert then responding,
I want to be a good person.
Now this line carries quite a bit of significance because, for starters, it shows a lot of Gilbert's insecurities of his shortcomings by leaving Arnie in the bath, his affair with Betty, and also the feeling of guilt of being ashamed about Bonnie as a mother. But also him fearing that if he were to act on the desire of leaving Endora and his family, it would ultimately not make him a good person. But the other significance is that this is the first time that Gilbert is fully honest with Becky. He talks honestly without avoiding the question or trying to switch the subject or something like that. He's being honest with her. Then of course, as soon as Gilbert is granted a moment of true connection, then reality has to come crashing down with,
Where's Arnie? Arnie?
Arnie has now ran off and climbed up the water tower all the way to the top, this time being arrested for it. This has now pushed it so that Bonnie does a very courageous act and actually leaves the house and goes to the police station. After screaming at Jerry, who clearly has a history together with Bonnie and the entire Grape family, then they have a back and forth, and they agree to let him go. Even though I'm pretty sure that's not how the legal system works, but you know, there we are. And she walks out of the station and gets publicly mocked and ridiculed by all the other residents of Endora, again establishing the Grape family as the main people of ridicule in this town. But this also becomes a little bit of a turning point. We see again some kids peeping in through the window like they did earlier in the film as well. But this time, Ellen, the girl who has been very bratty and very disregardant of the family's needs and behaviors throughout the entire film, this time it's her that actually picks up something and throws it at the window trying to defend the family's honor. But the next scene comes with a lot of importance. Gilbert has told Becky what happened, and he is looking at their map asking them where it is that they're gonna go next. He is now very much at a crossroads and very much considering leaving together with Becky. But Becky then turns Gilbert around, pulls him close, kisses him, and say that she would like to meet his mother. Becky can see that Gilbert is carrying a lot of guilt and shame over his mother, and she is trying to confront that by telling him that she wants to meet Bonnie. She wants to see the part of Gilbert that he is trying to hide, because she accepts and wants to see all sides of Gilbert, unlike Betty, who just admired his reliability. Coming up next is a very, very important scene. Ken Carver, through a very bizarre heart attack and drowning in the kiddie pool, has passed away. Now Betty has been left as a widow, and she decides to sell the house and bring the kids and move somewhere else. Now she does a final stop of going by the store to say goodbye to Gilbert. She speaks to Gilbert and she says that she misses her husband, but also she doesn't.
I miss him. And I don't. I miss him and I don't.
Very much mirroring the same state of mind that Gilbert has around his own family. He does have a lot of love for both Bonnie and Arnie, but he also carries a lot of resentment for the family as well. But then Betty says that,
I was thinking that if my boys turn out anything like you, I was thinking how that would be nice for my boys to be like you.
a very significant line as it reinforces that Betty sees Gilbert as the ideal son, cares a lot for his brother and his mother, something that Gilbert is doubting of whether or not he is. But then Becky enters afterwards and she has a very significant back and forth together with Gilbert.
Are you gonna miss her?
Now this question actually serves two subtextual purposes. Becky can obviously understand that Gilbert has had an affair together with Betty, and her asking him this is kind of testing his honesty. If it was that she asked Gilbert and he responded with, "What? No, I don't know, I barely know this girl," then she would have known that he is not being honest with her. But the other significance is also that when she says, "Are you going to miss her?" is implying that it is over. So she is essentially asking if it is that this relationship that he had together with Betty is this bygone by now. And then Gilbert answers with this very specific line delivery from Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Essentially saying that the relationship is done, which is why Becky then answers with,
Good.
so much subtext happening over here, and I absolutely adore it. Now, this is it. Becky's car is fixed and she is about to leave in the morning, and Gilbert is now faced with the choice of whether or not he's gonna go along with Becky on the road but also leave his family behind then, or if he's gonna stay in this life that has left him feeling so bitter and unfulfilled for so many years. Of course, Gilbert being the character he is, despite all the development he's done so far, he takes the easy way out and stays together with his family. So when it is that Becky has been invited to the party, now we can see that Gilbert has fully regressed to the character that he was in the beginning of the movie. She asks him whether or not Gilbert wants Becky to come, and he answers in this kind of passive way, same way that he did in the beginning of the movie. Becky sees his behavior here and confronts him straight up with it of,
I mean, go if you want.
Oh, so is this how you want it?
Becky is fed up. After everything they went through together and how much he was starting to open up to Becky and actually turning his life around, only for him to regress this quickly, which of course leaves Becky very upset about it, and she leaves. Now it's the evening before the party. Gilbert has decided to chicken out of the very rare opportunity of changing his life around for the better, and you can tell that he is very frustrated with himself. He spends all day going to Foodland, getting a new and very expensive cake as Arnie ruined the first one, only for Arnie to also ruin the new one. That combined with Arnie's constant refusal to actually take a bath. Gilbert loses it and forces Arnie's hand. Feeling apathetic about the life that he slipped away, as well as the frustration of his inability to change his way of life, Gilbert hits his breaking point. He hits Arnie. multiple times. Then, out of shame, he storms out of the house, driving way out of town. Arnie, in his despair, runs out of the house as well as Amy and Ellen also running out trying to locate both of their brothers. Arnie runs over to Becky's place, and Becky, knowing the situation, can figure out what it is that has happened. So when it is that her mom tells Becky that they should call Arnie's parents, Becky knows what to do instead. Then later, Gilbert drives over to Becky's caravan and he sees Arnie and Becky together. And here we get one of the most important scenes in the entire movie. Through encouragement and playfulness, Becky manages to get Arnie to go for a swim. Gilbert sees this and is blown away. He gets it now. Arnie can change. Arnie can live a life outside of Gilbert's constant protection and supervision. Gilbert has lived a life defined by duties and obligations, but here he sees Becky, who shows him that a life full of spontaneity, fun, and risks is something that Gilbert can have, and Gilbert can have that together with Arnie. But when Arnie is picked up by his sisters, Gilbert realizes that it's too late. He failed them. He beat Arnie, he left his responsibilities, and he abandoned his family, much like his father did before him. But in his vulnerable state, Becky embraces Gilbert. Whilst Betty was someone who rejected Gilbert as soon as he showed an interest of a different life, Becky embraces Gilbert, even at his worst. Gilbert has now finally dropped his guard and tells Becky everything about his late father. How his father just left them without saying anything. He also expresses his admiration for his mother back in the days, showing that he has a massive amount of love for his mother underneath all of the resentment that he's built up over the years. But he also talks about the fundamental passiveness of his father. And Becky's response might be my favorite line in the entire movie.
I used to know a guy like that.
Becky is seeing here what Gilbert is not realizing. Throughout the film, Gilbert has been very scared that he would become like his father, building up this unhappiness and ultimately abandoning his family. But Becky is seeing that Gilbert already is like his father, but not in the way that he thinks. Gilbert already is like his father by going through life passively, not showing any emotions and just being there. But Becky is also seeing that Gilbert has done what his father never could, facing his own insecurities and being able to start opening up, which makes Becky say maybe my favorite line in the entire film. Then we have a moment where Gilbert and Becky fully embrace each other. The next morning, the first thing that Gilbert says is,
It's Arnie's birthday. I need to go home.
Becky recognizes now that she has done everything she can. She has challenged Gilbert in all of his ways and he has started to open up quite a bit and she has done everything that she can. So now it is up to Gilbert of what he chooses to do with his life and how he chooses to move forward. Gilbert goes back and wants to make amends. He makes up with Amy. We also get a beautiful callback to the beginning where Arnie is hiding and Gilbert and Amy is pretending to look for him. Then Gilbert is in front of Arnie and hugs him and fully embraces him. He is now feeling a huge sense of care for his family. Not out of obligation, but because he fully wants to. However, there is still someone that he needs to make amends with. He has a heart-to-heart together with Bonnie where she scolds him for what he did, but mostly because of him disappearing, for leaving without a trace. Something that before would have led Gilbert to act very immaturely and getting defensive about the whole thing. But Gilbert has a different view now. He wants to be there for his family and he wants to take care of them, so he also takes responsibility for it. Bonnie then acknowledges what a huge burden she's been for the family and that she knows that Gilbert is ashamed of her. Now in the entire movie up until this point, that has been the case, but it's not anymore. Gilbert can now see how everything has gotten to the point where it is right now, and now he genuinely wants to care for and protect his family and protect Bonnie's honor, which leads to us getting one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. Becky comes to the party and Gilbert introduces her to Bonnie. This scene carries so much weight for both the characters and the themes of this movie. For starters, we see Gilbert for the first time properly take agency and act on what he wants to do. Bonnie says no, and even Becky says that we can do it later, but Gilbert puts his foot down. This is what he wants to do. He wants to invite Becky in to see all sides of his life, but it's also a way of trying to honor Bonnie by inviting someone in from the outside, from the world that has ridiculed them and cast them out. Now someone from the outside comes in, and someone who comes in with no judgment and even embracing Bonnie for who she is. Of course, Bonnie is very ashamed and scared of being judged, so she immediately says,
I haven't always been like this.
but Becky, being the fantastic person she is, comes with the incredible response of,
I haven't always been like this.
what an amazing exchange. The theme and the characters are paying off in so many ways in this very short and tiny moment we have over here. God, yeah. Man, this scene hits me every time that I see it, man. After the party, Bonnie makes a final attempt to try and change the situation. She walks up the stairs to the bedroom. The kids can't believe their eyes. She actually leaves the couch that she has been attached to for so many years and go to the room that her and her late husband shared. All the kids help her out upstairs and give her everything that she needs, and she then pulls Gilbert aside and tells him that,
You're my knight in shimmering armor.
and Gilbert reminds her that the saying is knight in shining armor, but Bonnie reiterates that it's shimmering.
I think you mean shining.
No. Shimmer. You shimmer and you glow.
Gilbert is not this perfect hero from the fairy tales that comes in. Gilbert is flawed and damaged, but still someone who expresses a great deal of heroism for his family and for Bonnie. Then we get the scene that was most played for award ceremonies for DiCaprio's incredible performance that he has here. Bonnie has passed away in her sleep, leaving her family devastated. Just when things were starting to look better for the family, they lose the mother to them all. After having had police and medical come by and look at the situation, they acknowledge that it's gonna take a great deal of manpower to get her out. In fact, it's gonna take a crane to lift her out of her bedroom. The family realizes that this will draw a crowd, and Bonnie Grape and her family will, yet again, even in death, be the laughingstock of Endora. Gilbert loses it. He has just come around to realizing how much he cares for his family and how much he wants to protect them. And just as he realized that, Bonnie is taken away from him and now will be publicly mocked in front of the entire town. Gilbert refuses. They decide to keep Bonnie's honor and for them all to move on by burning down the house together with Bonnie inside. The house that made them all feel trapped. The house that caged Gilbert to a life of duties, obligations, and agony. The house that their father hung himself in and left the entire family devastated. The house that Bonnie was so attached to for so many years. Now, the father, the house, and Bonnie can all rest together. 1 year later, Amy has gotten a job offer, Ellen is switching schools, and Arnie and Gilbert are free to do whatever they want. They meet up with Becky, and they will join her in traveling the world together. Gilbert going together with Arnie, the brother that he cares tremendously for, and also together with Becky, the girl that means the world for him and the one that helped him to change for the better. It's not perfect, and it never will be, but it is the life that Gilbert chooses to live. Man, this is quite cathartic getting this out. Fun anecdote about myself, back in 2019, I wrote my first analysis on this movie as well, and I have sat on a similar script to this for about 6 years, and I haven't gotten it out. It's a very, very important movie to me, both in terms of how much I love it and how fucking excellent it is, but also with that whole thing of just like, it just hits so many spots for me, and it's quite cathartic being able to get this out after having thought about this exact video for almost 6 years at this point. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed my take on this whole thing and the video essay I did on that, and make sure to tell your friends about this film as well, because man, it's one of those forgotten masterpieces that really, really does a lot. Let me know what you think about my take on everything down in the comments, and as always, like and subscribe, and see us.